I know that a lot of Jews are very upset about all this anti-Semitism in the world, as we should be, but it is clarifying and important. You know, the Torah and Judaism is very interested in polar opposites. We have the idea of kodesh and vchol, of the holy and profane. We have the idea of God saying, I put before you good and evil, a blessing and curse. There are certain things in the world that are good and certain things in the world that are bad. I know that a lot of people like to think everybody's basically good at heart and they're just misunderstood, but that's clearly not the case. There is real evil in the world. We had the Nazis, we had Amalek, we had Haman, and now we can see clearly who's on the side of good and who's on the side of evil. Now, 95% of Israel, according to 3 polls, 95%, think about that for a second, supported what was going on in Gaza. To get 95% of the Jews to agree on anything is a miracle, but 95% of Israel supported what was happening. Why? Because it was good against evil. Not that all the Palestinians are evil, but Hamas is evil. Their charter calls for genocide. Their charter calls for the destruction of Israel. And they're joined by other jihadist groups like ISIS, or ISIL as they're now called, Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Iran, which regularly calls for the death and destruction of Jews everywhere and Israel. Now, there are some Muslim countries that have been supportive of Israel in this. Egypt, because it's not in the hands of Muslim Brotherhood as much as Obama wanted it to be. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, all were rooting for Israel in this. And who's evil? Well, you've got these terrorist groups that call for the death and destruction of Jews. You've got Europe, which I would give a half and half rating to, or negative rating to, who's sitting idly by, who are not voting for Israel, but now Spain wants to interdict Israeli arms deals, as small as it is, the Brazilian president, and other people who are condemning Israel, the use of the word genocide among people, even the reporters. Some of them I know are scared to death because they're in Gaza and they're frightened of telling the truth. But you have others who regularly talk about the fatalities in Gaza, as sad as they are, forgetting that Israel was hit by thousands of missiles. These tunnels were aimed at only killing innocent Jews, the indiscriminate missiles going to Israel, and the Israelis trying harder than any country in the history of the world to prevent civilian casualties. The story of the pilot who called off 17 bombing raids because he was afraid that he was going to hit civilians. Then we have the information now of the Hamas manual, which talks about the advantages of human shields, the murder of 160 kids, forcing them to build those tunnels. Real evil. Then now you're starting to see some supposed rabbis and cantors and other supposed leaders condemning Israel. Very clarifying to find out who's with us and who's against us. There's a passage in the book of Joshua, chapter 5, verse 3, where Joshua sees a figure with a drawn sword and not sure who it is before the big battle to conquer Israel, and he says, are you with us or against us? Now, it turns out the figure was the captain of the Lord of Hosts, but you can't always be sure. And so, even though this anti-Semitism is disgusting and horrifying, but it's very clarifying, because now we can know for sure who's with us and who's against us, in case there was any doubt before. No, not everybody is good at heart. There's a lot of evil in the world, and it has to be fought and resisted carefully. Now, I'm sure that 95% consensus is going to break up a little bit as life happens and politics happens, but we cannot forget. Remember, after the Holocaust, we said never again? Well, we can't let it happen. Here we have, thank God, a Congress that's very supportive of what was happening. Then we have J Street, who raised money to elect 3 congressmen out of the 8 who voted against Iron Dome funding. Those people who mistakenly view that peace with the Palestinians is possible when it's clearly not. When Abbas, who's supposed to be the moderate, regularly honors murderers. His curriculum still teaches kindergartners to want to kill Jews. His summer camps train potential terrorists. He talks about how there can never be a Jew living in the state of Palestine, how he will never agree to a Jewish state. Yes, there is real evil. And so, as sad as it is, and as disgusting it is, as scary as it is, at least we know who's with us and who's against us. And that is very edifying.